I never thought those words would come from my daughter. After dedicating my entire life to Jessica, sacrificing everything so she could have the best, those 7 words crushed me completely. A week before her 30th birthday, as I was finalizing the $450,000 down payment for her dream house, Jessica looked me straight in the eyes and said, "The greatest gift would be if you just died." 22 years of raising her alone after losing my wife Laura, working myself to exhaustion, putting Jessica through the finest schools, and this was her response when I hesitated about additional funds. That moment changed everything, forcing me to make the hardest decision any father could face. Laura and I were college sweethearts. We married young, had Jessica when we were both 26, and planned for a large family. Life had other plans. When Jessica was 8, Laura was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. Despite fighting bravely through 3 rounds of chemotherapy and 2 surgeries, we lost her just 14 months after the diagnosis. I was devastated, but I had a little girl who needed me. Jessica was my world, my reason to get up every morning despite the crushing grief. I promised myself that I would give her everything Laura and I had dreamed of providing together. I wanted her to have opportunities, education, and security. I wanted her to never feel the absence of her mother in terms of what we could provide. I worked as an electrical engineer at a good company. But after Laura died, I took on consulting jobs on weekends and evenings to build up our savings. While other fathers coached soccer teams or went fishing, I was hunched over blueprints at our kitchen table. When Jessica needed braces, I sold my beloved classic Mustang that Laura and I had restored together. When she got accepted to her dream private high school, I remortgaged our house to afford the tuition. "You spoil her too much, Ivan," my best friend Sam would say during our rare fishing trips. "Kids need boundaries more than they need stuff." But I would shake my head. "You don't understand what it's like to raise a child alone. I'm all she has." My sister-in-law Diane, Laura's younger sister who remained close to us after her death, was more direct. Laura would want Jessica to learn responsibility, not entitlement. She told me once, when Jessica demanded a $500 prom dress at 16. But I gave in anyway, unable to bear the disappointment on my daughter's face. Looking back, I can see how Jessica changed gradually over the years. The sweet little girl, who would make me handmade cards for my birthday, evolved into a teenager who expected expensive gifts. The child who once hugged me gratefully when I worked overtime to pay for her summer camp became a college student who complained that her car wasn't as nice as her roommates. Still, I told myself this was normal. She was young. She would outgrow this phase and appreciate the sacrifices one day. When she met Tyler during her senior year of college, I was hopeful. He came from a wealthy family, was studying business, and seemed to genuinely care for Jessica. I ignored the warning signs that he also reinforced her materialistic values. The way they both talked about future houses and cars and vacation properties, as if these were birthright expectations rather than achievements to work toward. After graduation, Jessica and Tyler moved in together, in an expensive apartment I helped subsidize. Jessica got a job in marketing, but complained constantly about the work and her inadequate salary. Tyler worked for his father's investment firm and was doing well, but they lived beyond even their combined means. I continued helping with rent, car payments, and credit card bills that mysteriously appeared each month. When they announced their engagement 3 years ago, I paid for most of the wedding despite Tyler's parents' considerable wealth. Jessica explained that they were old-fashioned and believed the bride's family should pay. The wedding cost nearly $70,000, depleting what remained of my retirement fund at the time. I didn't complain. I wanted her day to be perfect. 2 months ago, Jessica called me bubbling with excitement. She and Tyler had found their dream house in an upscale neighborhood. The price was $1.2 million. "Dad, we need your help with the down payment," she said, not really asking but telling. "We need at least $450,000 to get the mortgage rate we want." My stomach dropped. I had been planning to retire next year at 65. My financial advisor had warned me repeatedly that I was already behind on retirement savings because of my generosity toward Jessica. "Sweetheart, that's a lot of money," I said carefully. Have you looked at more affordable options? Dad, this is the neighborhood we want to raise your grandchildren in someday, she replied, hitting the emotional trigger she knew would work. Do you want your grandkids to grow up somewhere unsafe or go to subpar schools? I agreed to think about it, then spent 2 weeks reviewing my finances. I calculated that if I worked until 70, took a reverse mortgage on my paid-off home, and lived very frugally, I could give Jessica the down payment and still have enough to survive on. Not thrive, but survive. When I called to tell her I would provide the down payment as her 30th birthday gift, she squealed with delight. It was the most genuine gratitude I'd heard from her in years. You're the best dad ever. I love you so much. For a moment, I felt like I'd made the right choice. That feeling lasted exactly 3 weeks, until I discovered the first betrayal. It happened by accident. I was having lunch with Gerald, a colleague whose son was friends with Tyler. As we discussed retirement plans, Gerald mentioned being impressed by my generosity. Tyler's father was just telling me how you refused to help Jessica and Tyler buy a house, even though you're sitting on a fortune from your wife's life insurance, Gerald said. I defended you, of course. I know you've always done everything for Jessica. I nearly choked on my sandwich. Laura's life insurance had been modest and was spent entirely on Jessica's education. Moreover, I had just committed to the largest financial gift of my life. Why would Jessica lie about this? That evening I called Tyler's parents for the first time ever, introducing myself somewhat awkwardly. As we talked, I discovered Jessica had told them an elaborate story about how I had remarried, had new children, and had cut her off financially. None of it was true. I had remained single, dedicated solely to raising her. This discovery was the first crack in the foundation of trust I had built my relationship with Jessica upon. Little did I know, it was just the beginning. 1 week before Jessica's 30th birthday, I agreed to meet her for dinner at Bellini's, an upscale Italian restaurant where the pasta dishes alone cost $30. Jessica had chosen the place, as she always did. I arrived early and was already seated when she swept in, 15 minutes late without apology, wearing a new outfit I didn't recognize. I ordered you a glass of that Cabernet you like, I said as she sat down. I'm not drinking red wine anymore, she replied, signaling the waiter. I'll have a Grey Goose martini, extra dry. The evening started pleasantly enough. Jessica talked about the house they were in the process of buying, thanks to my promised down payment. But as the main course arrived, her tone changed. Tyler and I have been thinking, she said, cutting into her veal. The house is perfect, but the bathroom fixtures are dated and the kitchen needs upgrading before we move in. Those sound like projects you could tackle over time, I suggested. She shook her head. We'd need to do it before moving in. The contractor gave us an estimate of $65,000. We were hoping you could increase your gift to cover that too. I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone. Jessica, I've already stretched myself to the absolute limit for the down payment. I've shown you my finances. There simply isn't more to give right now. Her face hardened in a way I'd seen increasingly often over the years. You always say that, but you always find money when you want to. You just don't want me to have nice things. That's not true at all, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've supported you your entire life. I put you through private school and college. I helped with your wedding, your car, your rent, the bare minimum any parent should do, she scoffed, loud enough that diners at nearby tables glanced over. Jessica, please lower your voice, I said. That's when she erupted. You've never given me what I really needed. Mom would have understood, but you've always been selfish deep down. You act so noble with your sacrifices, but you've held me back at every turn. And now when I finally find the perfect house, you're nickel and diming me. People were openly staring now. The waiter hovered uncertainly nearby, holding our dessert menus. I felt my face burning with embarrassment and hurt. I've given you everything I possibly could, I said quietly. Well, it's never enough, she hissed. You know what? The greatest gift would be if you just died so I could get your life insurance. At least then, you'd finally be useful. The restaurant seemed to go silent. though in reality conversations probably continued around us. I felt a crushing pressure in my chest, like someone had placed a weight directly on my heart. My vision blurred slightly at the edges, and I had to focus on breathing. Jessica seemed to realize she'd crossed a line. Her expression shifted from anger to a calculated softening. "Dad, I didn't mean that," she backpedaled, reaching for my hand. "I'm just stressed about the house. You know how much this means to me." I pulled my hand away, signaled the waiter for the check, and paid without a word. As we walked to our cars, Jessica kept trying to normalize what had happened, talking about her birthday party as if she hadn't just wished me dead. "You'll be there at 6, right? Tyler's parents are coming too." I nodded numbly and got into my car. I watched her drive away in the luxury SUV I had helped her buy 2 years ago, and sat in the parking lot for nearly an hour, replaying her words in my mind. That night, I couldn't sleep. My chest pain continued, accompanied by a cold sweat and slight nausea. Around 4 in the morning, I called my doctor's emergency line. He advised me to come to the ER to rule out a heart attack. After 6 hours of tests, the diagnosis was not a heart attack but severe stress response. The doctor, a woman about my age named Dr. Patterson, looked at me sternly over her glasses. "Your EKG shows stress-induced abnormalities, Ivan. Your blood pressure is dangerously high. Whatever is causing this level of stress in your life needs to be addressed before it kills you." Her choice of words struck a chord. Before it kills you. Isn't that what Jessica wanted? For me to die? As I was driving home from the hospital, my phone pinged with banking alerts. I had set up notifications for the emergency credit card I had given Jessica years ago, to be used only for true emergencies. The alerts showed 5 charges in the past 24 hours. A high-end clothing store, a spa, a gourmet grocery, a wine shop, and a jewelry boutique. Total charges, just over $4,000. When I got home, I logged into my account and reviewed the previous statements I had been ignoring. In the past month alone, Jessica had charged over $23,000 on my emergency card. There were no emergencies I could identify among the charges, just luxury purchases and expensive restaurant bills. This second betrayal, coming so soon after her cruel words, broke something inside me. For the first time, I saw the pattern of behavior without the filter of fatherly love and guilt obscuring my vision. My chest pain returned, but this time it was accompanied by something unexpected: clarity. I reached for my phone and made 2 calls. The first was to Frank Miller, my financial advisor who had been warning me for years about enabling Jessica's financial dependence. The second was to Patricia Young, an attorney I had consulted during my home refinancing. I needed to understand my options, and I needed to understand them quickly. Frank Miller had been my financial advisor for 15 years. He had helped me navigate paying for Jessica's education and had repeatedly expressed concern about my retirement plans. When I walked into his office the next morning, he took one look at my face and canceled his next appointment. "What happened, Ivan?" he asked, closing his office door. I told him everything, from Jessica's lies to Tyler's parents to her cruel statement at dinner and the emergency credit card abuse. As I spoke, I realized these weren't isolated incidents, but part of a pattern that had been developing for years. Frank listened without interruption, then pulled up my financial records on his computer. "Ivan, I've been trying to tell you this gently for years, but now I need to be blunt. You can't afford to give Jessica this down payment. Even before this incident, it was financial suicide. You've already depleted your retirement savings to a dangerous level." He showed me projections of my financial future if I went through with the gift. Even working until 70, I would likely outlive my money, especially if I needed long-term care, which my family medical history suggested was probable. "What are my options?" I asked. "First, cancel the down payment," he said firmly. "It hasn't been transferred yet, correct?" I nodded. The funds were in a separate account, ready to be transferred at closing in 2 weeks. Second, cut off the emergency credit card immediately. Third, we need to restructure your assets to secure your retirement. From Frank's office, I went directly to Patricia Young's law firm. She specialized in estate planning and had a pragmatic approach I appreciated. "I'm concerned about your story on several levels," Patricia said, after hearing me out. "First, there's the financial abuse aspect. Second, there are potential legal implications if Jessica and Tyler have already signed contracts based on your verbal promise of funds." "They're scheduled to close on the house in 2 weeks," I said. "They've already done the inspection and finalized the mortgage approval based on my down payment." Patricia leaned forward. "Have you signed any documents promising this money?" "No. It was a verbal agreement." "Then legally, you're in the clear. Morally is another question. But given what you've told me, I think you need to prioritize your own well-being now." As we talked through options, Patricia mentioned something that caught my attention. Some clients in family conflict situations find it helpful to take a complete break. Sometimes it's the only way for the other party to recognize the consequences of their actions. On my drive home, those words kept repeating in my mind. A complete break. In a strange way, wasn't that exactly what Jessica had wished for? For me to be gone? At a red light, my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Spoke to the contractor again. Actually needs $80K for renovations, not $65K. Will you be increasing the birthday gift to cover? Need to know, as soon as possible." No, please. No acknowledgement of our disastrous dinner. Not even a question of how I was feeling after her death wish. That's when the plan crystallized in my mind. Jessica wanted me dead? Perhaps I should give her exactly what she asked for. Not literally, but by removing myself completely from her life. No more financial support, no more emotional punching bag, no more enabler. When I got home, I made a third call to my old college roommate, Arthur, who had retired to a small town in Maine. Arthur had been trying to convince me for years to buy the cabin next to his when it went up for sale. "Is that cabin still available?" I asked when he answered. "Sure is. Owners dropped the price twice." "Why? You finally coming to your senses and getting out of the rat race?" "Something like that," I replied. That evening, as I was researching the Maine property online, my doorbell rang. It was Diane, my late wife's sister, who lived about an hour away and occasionally checked in on me. "You missed our monthly lunch," she said, concern evident in her expression. "That's not like you." I invited her in and found myself telling her everything. Diane had always been more clear-eyed about Jessica than I was, having raised 3 well-adjusted independent children of her own. "I'm not surprised," she said when I finished. "I've watched you give and give, while Jessica takes and takes. Laura would be heartbroken to see what she's become." "What would Laura want me to do?" I asked, feeling lost. Diane considered this carefully. Laura believed in consequences. She believed they were how we learn and grow. She wouldn't want you to enable behavior that's hurting both Jessica and you. As we talked further, Diane shared something that shocked me. According to mutual friends, Jessica had been telling people I was paying for the entire house, not just the down payment. She'd also been showing photos of renovations already underway at the new house, renovations I knew nothing about. "She's already started work on a house she doesn't own yet?" I asked incredulously. "From what I understand, she gave the contractor a small deposit and promised the rest when you gave her the birthday gift." This revelation stunned me. Jessica had put herself in financial jeopardy based on an assumption that I would bail her out, as I always had. The contractor could potentially sue her if the funds weren't available. After Diane left, I sat down and methodically began executing my plan. First, I called the bank and canceled the transfer for the house down payment. Then I froze and then canceled the emergency credit card. Next, I contacted my life insurance company and reduced Jessica's beneficiary portion from 100% to 20%, designating the remaining 80% to a trust that would only pay out under specific conditions related to financial responsibility. I spent the next day researching the Maine property, speaking with a local real estate agent, and making an offer substantially below asking price, which was accepted by the motivated seller. I arranged for a streamlined closing process. I began sorting through my belongings, deciding what to keep, what to store, and what to sell. My house, fortunately, had appreciated considerably over the 30 years I'd owned it. I decided not to sell immediately, but to rent it out through a property management company, providing steady income while maintaining the asset. Through it all, Jessica continued sending demanding texts about additional renovation funds, never once asking why I had canceled the credit card or mentioning her cruel words at dinner. Her final message that day read, "Tyler's parents offered to lend us the renovation money if you're being difficult, but that's so embarrassing for me. Don't make me go begging to them." The irony of her using the word begging when demanding nearly $500,000 from me didn't escape my notice. That night, I wrote Jessica a letter explaining my decision. I detailed every sacrifice I had made, every bill I had paid, every gift I had given. I included bank statements showing the total financial support over the years, which came to over $600,000 beyond normal child-rearing expenses. I explained that I was canceling the down payment and removing myself from her life as she had wished. I included documentation of a small life insurance policy, naming her as beneficiary, worth $50,000, that would remain in effect. My final gift to her, but far less than she expected. I concluded the letter with words that were painful to write but necessary. "Jessica, I will always love you as my daughter, but I can no longer support the person you've become. I hope someday you'll understand that this decision comes from love, not spite. Your mother would want you to find your own strength, not depend on taking from others. The greatest gift I can give you now is the opportunity to become the person I know you can be, without my enabling harmful patterns." As I sealed the envelope, I felt an overwhelming mix of grief, resolution, and, surprisingly, relief. For the first time in decades, I was prioritizing my own well-being, and it felt both terrifying and necessary. In the 5 days leading up to Jessica's birthday, I executed my plan with methodical precision. I closed on the main cabin, paying cash from the funds that would have gone to Jessica's house. I established a new banking relationship with a small local bank in Maine, transferring enough funds for 1 year of living expenses while leaving my retirement accounts untouched for now. I hired movers to place most of my furniture and personal items into storage, telling neighbors I was taking an extended vacation to find myself after retirement. I arranged for my mail to be forwarded to a post office box in Maine that Arthur would help me check. I submitted my retirement paperwork at work, using accumulated vacation time for my final 2 weeks so I could leave immediately. The hardest part was saying goodbye to the home where Laura and I had raised Jessica, where so many happy memories lived alongside the painful ones. I walked through each room the night before my departure, touching walls, opening closets, allowing myself to remember. In Jessica's old bedroom, preserved much as it had been in her teenage years, I sat on the bed and wept for the little girl who had once brought me dandelions and called me her hero. I reminded myself that I wasn't doing this to punish Jessica, but to help us both break a destructive cycle. I hoped that one day we might rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. Jessica's 30th birthday party was scheduled for Saturday at 6 in the evening at her and Tyler's current apartment. They had planned to announce the new house purchase to friends and family, with the closing scheduled for the following Wednesday. I knew my absence and the canceled funding would create a crisis, but I had concluded that sometimes a crisis is necessary for growth. On Saturday morning, I drove to Jessica's apartment building, while she and Tyler were out at her pre-party hair appointment. Using the key she had given me for emergencies, I entered their apartment and placed the envelope containing my letter, financial records, and insurance policy information on her dining table, propped against the expensive vase I had given them as a housewarming present 3 years earlier. I took one last look around at the luxury apartment I had helped subsidize, at the photographs of Jessica and Tyler in expensive vacation destinations, at the collection of designer items casually displayed. I said a silent goodbye, locked the door behind me, and walked away from my old life. By noon, I was on the highway heading north, my SUV packed with only essential belongings and a few sentimental items. I had turned off my phone after sending Jessica a brief text. "I won't be at the party tonight. The envelope on your table explains everything. I love you, but I need to do this." 6 hours into my drive, I stopped at a rest area and purchased a prepaid phone, using it to check my messages. There were 37 missed calls from Jessica, 12 from Tyler, and 3 from Diane, who I had informed of my plans in confidence. The voicemails ranged from confusion to anger. "Dad, where are you? What envelope? Call me back immediately." Jessica, 1:24 p.m. "You can't be serious. You promised this money. We've signed contracts." Jessica, 2:10 p.m. "Mr. Anderson, this is Tyler. Whatever issues you and Jessica have, we need to discuss this like adults. The closing is in 4 days." Tyler, 3:45 p.m. But it was the final voicemail from Tyler that truly shocked me. His voice was cold and entitled, "Ivan, I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to understand something. My parents are willing to loan us the money temporarily, but we expect you to reimburse them with interest. This house is our right, and the money is practically Jessica's inheritance anyway. If you're having some kind of senior moment or breakdown, get help, and then fulfill your obligations." Not once in any of the messages did either of them express concern for my welfare or acknowledge the cruel words that had precipitated this situation. It confirmed that I had made the necessary, if painful, choice. I turned off the prepaid phone, continued my journey north, and arrived at my new cabin shortly after midnight. Arthur was waiting with a hot meal and no questions, respecting my need for space. As I settled into the small but comfortable bedroom that night, watching moonlight filter through pine trees outside my window, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: peace. The first month in Maine passed in a blur of quiet adjustment. The cabin, while rustic, had all the basic amenities I needed. I spent my days taking long walks in the woods, reading books I'd postponed for years, and helping Arthur with small projects around his property. For the first time since Laura died, I had no schedule, no financial pressures, and no emotional demands depleting my energy. I checked messages on my prepaid phone every few days. The calls from Jessica eventually slowed from dozens daily to a few per week, though their tone remained demanding and accusatory. Through Arthur, who maintained contact with mutual friends, I learned that Jessica and Tyler had been forced to cancel their house purchase, losing their earnest money deposit of $15,000. The contractor they had prematurely hired was threatening legal action over unpaid work already completed. Diane kept me updated on family matters, acting as my only intentional connection to my old life. According to her, Jessica was telling everyone who would listen that I had stolen money that was rightfully hers and abandoned her. She claimed I was having a mental breakdown, possibly early dementia, and was being influenced by negative people who had turned me against her. "She's rewriting history," Diane told me during one of our weekly calls. "Now she says she's been supporting you emotionally through depression for years, and this is how you repay her kindness." The audacity was almost impressive. Still, I felt my resolve weaken at times. On difficult nights, I would take out old photographs of Jessica as a child, remembering the sweet girl who once existed, wondering if I had somehow failed her fundamentally in her upbringing despite my best intentions. In my third month in Maine, I established a new routine. I volunteered at the local library 3 mornings a week, joined a fishing club with Arthur, and even went on a dinner date with a kind widow named Margaret who lived in town. My blood pressure returned to normal levels. I lost 15 pounds without trying, and the constant tension headaches I had experienced for years disappeared. Then came the confrontation I had known was inevitable. It was a Sunday afternoon in early October, with the Maine forests ablaze in autumn colors. I was splitting firewood behind my cabin when an unfamiliar SUV pulled into my driveway. Before the engine even switched off, Jessica leaped from the passenger seat, with Tyler following more slowly from the driver's side. She looked both angry and somehow smaller than I remembered, dressed in designer clothes that seemed out of place against the rustic backdrop. "So this is where you've been hiding while ruining our lives," she shouted, marching toward me. I set down my axe carefully. "Hello, Jessica." "Tyler, don't hello me. Do you have any idea what you've done? We lost the house, we're being sued by the contractor, and Tyler's parents think I'm some kind of con artist because of your lies. What lies would those be? I asked quietly. You told them I was using you for money. You made me look like some kind of gold digger. I never spoke to them after our initial conversation where I learned you had been lying about me, I replied. Whatever they think of you now is based on their own observations. Tyler stepped forward, his expression a mixture of anger and embarrassment. Mr. Anderson, this situation has gone far enough. Jessica was upset and said something she didn't mean at that dinner. You've made your point with this dramatic disappearing act. It's time to act like adults and fix this mess. There's nothing to fix, I said. I made a decision to retire and live within my means. Jessica is 30 years old, with a husband and a good job. My financial support was a choice, not an obligation, and I've chosen to end it. Jessica's tactics shifted from anger to manipulation, her eyes filling with tears that seemed to appear on command. How could you do this to me? What would Mom think of you abandoning me? This was the moment I had dreaded and prepared for. Your mother would be heartbroken, Jessica. Not by my actions, but by what you've become. Laura valued independence, gratitude, and kindness above all else. You don't know what she would want, Jessica shouted, but I detected uncertainty in her voice. I was married to her for 12 years. We talked about how we wanted to raise you, what values we wanted to instill. Entitlement wasn't one of them. I invited them inside, thinking a calmer conversation might be possible. Arthur, seeing the confrontation from his cabin, texted to ask if I needed help. I assured him I was fine, and proceeded to make coffee while Jessica paced my small living room, examining my modest new lifestyle with evident disdain. So this is what you left everything for? This? Shack in the middle of nowhere? This shack is paid for, I replied. I own it outright. Can you say the same about anything you possess? Tyler, who had been relatively quiet, sat down at my kitchen table. Look, we need to discuss this practically. The contractor is suing us for $45,000 for work already completed. We lost our earnest money on the house. Our credit is at risk. Those are the consequences of counting on money you didn't have yet, I said, placing coffee cups in front of them. I never signed any agreements with the contractor. I never promised the money in writing for the house. Those were decisions you and Jessica made. Based on your verbal promise? Jessica interjected. A promise made before you told me the greatest gift I could give you would be my death, I said quietly. Words have consequences, Jessica. So do actions. For the first time, Tyler looked at Jessica with something like doubt. You actually said that to him? Jessica flushed. I told you, I was angry. He knows I didn't mean it literally. Whether you meant it literally or not, it revealed how you truly see me, I said. As a resource, not as a father. As someone whose value to you is financial, not emotional. I retrieved the folder containing copies of all the financial documents I had left in my letter. I've supported you well beyond what most parents can or do. College tuition, rent subsidies, car payments, credit card bills, wedding costs. The total comes to over $600,000 since you turned 18. Tyler's eyes widened as he reviewed the documents. This can't be right. Jessica said your support was minimal. Jessica shot him a warning look. Don't listen to his twisted version. He's manipulating the numbers. These are bank statements and canceled checks, Jessica. They're not subject to interpretation. The confrontation continued for nearly 2 hours, cycling through anger, bargaining, and guilt trips. Jessica threatened legal action, then tried to guilt me with memories of her mother, then claimed I was having a mental breakdown. Tyler, I noticed, grew increasingly uncomfortable as the conversation progressed, often looking at Jessica with new eyes when she made particularly entitled or dishonest statements. Finally, Tyler stood up. I need some air, he said, and walked outside. Alone with Jessica, I tried once more to reach her. Jessica, this isn't about punishment. It's about both of us finding healthier paths forward. The relationship we had wasn't good for either of us. Oh, please, she scoffed. You loved being the heroic, sacrificing dad. It made you feel superior. Is that really how you see my efforts to provide for you? As some kind of power play? Something in my tone must have reached her because her facade cracked slightly. You were always so perfect, she said, her voice smaller. Working extra hours, never complaining, sacrificing everything. Do you know how impossible that is to live up to? Tyler's going to leave me when he realizes who I really am. Everyone does eventually. For the first time, I glimpsed the insecurity beneath her entitlement, the fear driving her constant demands. Jessica, my sacrifices weren't meant to be a burden on you. They were expressions of love. They were impossible standards, she burst out. I can never be as selfless as you, and I'm tired of feeling guilty about it. At least when you were giving me things, I felt like I was getting something for all that guilt. I was about to respond when the front door opened. Tyler hadn't gone far, apparently, because his face showed he had heard Jessica's confession from the porch. Is that what all this is about? He asked, looking at Jessica with a mixture of confusion and dawning comprehension. You've been lying about your dad to make yourself look better because you feel inadequate compared to him? Jessica looked trapped between us, her carefully constructed narrative crumbling. You don't understand either, she said, tears forming again. But this time they seemed genuine. Everyone leaves eventually. Mom left. Dad will too, he already has. And you will once you see what a mess I really am. Tyler's expression softened slightly. Jessica, I married you, not some idealized version of you. But I can't be with someone who lies constantly and treats others as resources rather than people. It was perhaps the most honest conversation the three of us had ever had. As painful as it was, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, this crisis might lead to genuine change. After Tyler's statement, Jessica's composure completely collapsed. Years of careful image management and manipulation gave way to raw emotion. What do you want from me? She shouted, looking between Tyler and me. To admit I'm a terrible daughter? Fine. I'm a terrible daughter. I'm selfish and greedy, and I've used Dad's guilt for years to get what I want. Is that what you want to hear? Tyler sat down heavily across from her. What I want is the truth, Jessica, for once. No manipulation, no calculation, just honesty. I watched my daughter struggle, decades of patterns at war with the immediate crisis. Finally, she looked at me, truly looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. I do resent you, she said quietly. Not because you've failed me, but because you've been so damn good. Do you know what it's like growing up with St. Ivan as your father? The man who worked 3 jobs after Mom died? The man who never dated again because he was so devoted to his daughter? The man everyone in the neighborhood praised for his selflessness? I was stunned. I never thought of it that way. Every time I wanted something normal, like complaining about homework or fighting about curfew, I felt guilty because poor Dad was working so hard. When other kids rebelled against their parents, I couldn't because poor Dad had already lost Mom, and it would break his heart. Her words hit me like physical blows. Had my sacrifices actually harmed her in ways I never intended? So I found other ways to rebel, she continued, the words pouring out now, taking more than I needed, treating your sacrifices as expected rather than appreciated. It was the only power I had. Tyler was watching her with an unreadable expression. And me? Where do I fit into this? Jessica's face crumpled. I love you, but I also chose you because you come from money. Because I thought if I married into a wealthy family, I wouldn't need to keep taking from Dad. And then maybe I could finally have a normal relationship with him without the guilt and resentment. The brutal honesty seemed to exhaust her. She put her head in her hands. But it didn't work that way. I just transferred the pattern to you and your family. Taking, expecting, demanding. And now, I've ruined everything. I moved to sit beside her, not touching her but close enough to offer comfort. Jessica, I never meant to be a saint or set impossible standards. I was just trying to keep our lives together after your mother died. I was terrified of failing you. I know that. Rationally, I know that. But emotions aren't rational. Tyler cleared his throat. Where do we go from here? Because I love you, Jessica, but I can't continue in the relationship as it's been. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know how to be different. That's when I saw an opening, a chance to offer help rather than just funds. Therapy, I suggested. Both individual for you, Jessica, and couples counseling. And financial management classes that you attend together. We can't afford that now, Jessica said with a bitter laugh. We're being sued, remember? I won't pay for the contractor or the house, I said firmly, establishing a boundary. Those were choices you made. But I would help with therapy costs, as an investment in healing rather than enabling. Tyler nodded slowly. My company's insurance would cover part of it. We could manage the rest if we seriously downscaled our lifestyle. Jessica looked panic-stricken. Downscale? How much? Significantly, Tyler said. Moving to a smaller apartment. Selling your luxury SUV for something practical. No more designer clothes or five-star restaurants until we've rebuilt our finances. And no more financial help from me beyond the therapy support, I added. You need to learn to live within your actual means. Jessica looked between us, clearly seeing that we were united in this approach. For a moment, I thought she might revert to manipulation or anger, but instead, she simply nodded, looking exhausted but somehow also relieved. I wouldn't even know where to start, she admitted. That's what the financial counseling is for, Tyler said. And I think we need to start being completely honest with my parents, too. No more stories about your dad abandoning you or sitting on fictional life insurance money. As the conversation continued, something remarkable happened. The more honest Jessica became about her flaws and fears, the more Tyler's expression softened from anger to compassion. They weren't solving everything, but they were finally communicating authentically. After several hours, they prepared to leave. The problems weren't fixed, the financial issues weren't resolved, but a door had opened to a new kind of relationship, one based on truth rather than manipulation and enablement. As they walked to their car, Jessica turned back. Dad, I am sorry. For what I said at the restaurant. For all of it. It wasn't a complete transformation, and I didn't expect one. Real change would take time, consistency, and probably many setbacks. But it was a beginning. I know, I said. And I'm here when you're ready for a healthier relationship, not as a bank, but as a father. I watched their car disappear down the rural road, feeling both drained and cautiously hopeful. For the first time, I believed there might be a path forward for all of us. 6 months passed before I saw Jessica and Tyler again. During that time, we established a new pattern of communication, with brief weekly phone calls that deliberately avoided financial discussions. Sometimes these calls were tense or awkward, but we persevered, building a fragile foundation of more honest interaction. Through these conversations and updates from Diane, I learned that Jessica and Tyler had made significant changes. They had moved from their luxury apartment to a modest 2-bedroom rental, saving almost $2,000 monthly in rent. Jessica had sold her SUV and was driving a used sedan. Tyler had negotiated a settlement with the contractor, agreeing to a payment plan that stretched over 18 months. Most importantly, they had both committed to therapy. Jessica was seeing a psychologist who specialized in family dynamics and attachment issues, while together they attended both couples counseling and financial management classes through their church. In April, I received an unexpected call from Tyler. We'd like to come visit this weekend, if that's all right, he said. We have some news we want to share in person. I agreed, feeling both curiosity and trepidation. The last in-person meeting had been emotionally exhausting, though ultimately productive. They arrived on Saturday afternoon. The change in Jessica was subtle but noticeable. She wore minimal makeup and simple clothing, and the defensive edge that had characterized her for years seemed softer. Tyler appeared more confident, less the appeasing husband trying to keep peace at all costs. After an initial slightly awkward greeting, Jessica handed me an envelope. You should read this first, she said. Inside was a handwritten letter, several pages long. It began with a comprehensive apology, not just for the cruel comment that had triggered our estrangement, but for years of entitlement, manipulation, and taking advantage of my generosity. Jessica acknowledged how her behavior had harmed both our relationship and her own development as an independent adult. The letter continued with an explanation of the changes they had made, the insights she had gained in therapy, and their new financial situation. They had developed a strict budget, were living within their means for the first time, and had even started a modest savings account. The final paragraph brought tears to my eyes. I don't expect you to trust these changes immediately. Words are easy, and I've manipulated you with words for years. I'm asking for the chance to prove through consistent actions that I'm committed to building a healthier relationship, one based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. I miss my dad, not my bank. I hope someday you can forgive me enough to let me try to be the daughter you deserve. I looked up to find Jessica watching me anxiously. I mean every word, she said quietly. I know you do, I replied. And for the first time in perhaps decades, I truly believed her. Over lunch, they shared their news. They had found a modest starter home in an up-and-coming neighborhood, one actually within their budget with a conventional 30-year mortgage. The down payment would come from their own savings, supplemented by a small gift from Tyler's parents, who had become more supportive once they understood the full situation. We're not asking for money, Jessica clarified quickly. We just wanted your opinion on the property and the mortgage terms. I was touched by this request for guidance rather than funds, for knowledge rather than a handout. We spent the afternoon reviewing their mortgage documents, discussing property taxes, maintenance costs, and the benefits of additional principal payments when possible. I shared mistakes and lessons from my own homeownership experience, and they listened attentively, taking notes. That evening, as we sat on my small porch watching the sunset through pine trees, Jessica shared something unexpected. I'm pregnant, she said softly. 3 months along, my heart swelled with emotion. A grandchild, something I had hoped for but never felt entitled to experience. We wanted you to know that we're doing this right, Tyler added. We've adjusted our budget for childcare costs, started a college fund even though it's just $25 a month right now, and researched health insurance options thoroughly. We want our child to understand the value of money and hard work, Jessica said. Like Mom tried to teach me before she died. Like you tried to teach me before I stopped listening. 6 weeks later, I helped them move into their new home, a 1960s 3-bedroom ranch that needed cosmetic updates but was structurally sound. It was nothing like the luxury house they had attempted to purchase a year earlier, but watching them walk through the rooms, planning modest, DIY renovations they would do themselves over time, I saw a contentment I had never witnessed in their previous lifestyle of constant acquisition. Jessica asked for my help installing ceiling fans and painting the nursery. Tyler sought advice on replacing bathroom fixtures himself, rather than hiring a contractor. These requests for knowledge and time rather than money represented a fundamental shift in our relationship. Today, as I sit in their modest backyard for a small family dinner celebrating the birth of my grandson, James, I reflect on the painful but necessary journey we've taken. Jessica has just handed me another letter, this one expressing gratitude for the difficult lesson I taught by walking away when continued enabling would have been easier for all of us in the short term. You saved my marriage, she tells me quietly, while Tyler is inside changing James, and you saved me from myself. When you left that letter and disappeared, it was the most painful thing I've ever experienced, but it forced me to see myself clearly for the first time. I think about how my death as the enabler Jessica had taken advantage of for years allowed me to be reborn as the father she actually needed. How sometimes, the greatest act of parental love isn't giving children everything they want, but allowing them to experience the consequences that help them grow. I'm proud of you, I tell her. Words I haven't said in years and mean more deeply than ever before. Your mother would be too. Jessica smiles through tears. I'm trying to be someone you can both be proud of. It's a daily choice, but it's getting easier. I look around at this simple backyard gathering, so different from the extravagant celebrations Jessica once demanded. Tyler emerges with baby James, my grandson who will grow up understanding the value of hard work, the importance of living within one's means, and hopefully, the true meaning of family support that goes beyond financial assistance. This was never the path I expected our relationship to take, but as I hold my grandson and see the genuine growth in my daughter, I know it was the one we needed. Sometimes, the most loving gift isn't what someone demands, but what they truly need to become their best self. Sometimes, walking away is the only way to find a path back to each other. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to help someone you love, even though it hurt them initially? Or have you experienced someone setting boundaries with you that ultimately led to your growth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that sometimes tough love is the greatest gift we can give. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you wisdom and courage in your own family relationships.